So we clearly like this movie.
Yeah.
We clearly loved this movie. And
yeah.
there are so many different reasons why we loved this movie that we have to kind of organize this video in a specific way because it's going to be different than some of our previous reviews. So first we're going to talk about our overall thoughts. It was a great female-led superhero, great war film, great superhero film, great choreography, great story.
I absolutely agree. First off, can I just say, we're saying positive things about a DC movie.
Yeah.
Everything visually, technically was brilliant. I loved Diana. I loved Gal Gadot was amazing.
Yes. Speaking of which, first thing we're going to get into is character. We clearly can't talk about Wonder Woman without talking about Wonder Woman herself. We weren't really that sure of her in Batman v Superman, but here they really flesh out her character as this powerful yet naive girl from this island full of women who are very much removed from a lot of the aspects of the film, which is an interesting route to go with a character, but it works with someone like Diana who is sort of learning things as she goes along, and it's a genuinely inspiring character because her innocence and her need, not even her need, her want and her need to help people, it's sort of the crux of what a good superhero movie is. It's not what every superhero movie is, and obviously they all do it differently, but she just has this very simple, believe it or not, with a DC film, a simple goal and a simple ambition throughout the film, even as things start to change.
And to add to that, I loved her curiosity and her charm. We learn stuff through her, and she's a very likable person. Her persona is amazing. Even as a young Diana, she's so investing.
Her character is even more complimented and not, compromised by Steve Trevor. He is a spy. He is a genuinely funny character who also has the same goal, but in a more grounded, realistic, I've seen things since, which is a really great compliment to a character like Diana because it provides us with a different perspective and a perspective I think we're probably used to, but coming from a character who we want to like and we want to root for, so it doesn't necessarily come off as super dark or dismal because he's a likable guy.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. And Chris Pine did a marvelous job at it as well. And we've seen him do an incredible job with other characters, but here it could have been a really dumb character following Diana, but it wasn't. It was completely unique.
Let's go to the women of Themyscira because, Talk about female empowerment. Awesome warriors. Creating this great conflict of Diana, you don't know what war is like, based on, which we'll get to, the twists in a second, looking back on why they did the things that they did. It's very telling with what is revealed later in the film.
And each scene matters when we see Diana become like a little child and a teenager, and then, of course, Gal Gadot. As we know, it's so unique, and how they treat her, like you said, it's so cool.
Yeah, the treatment of Diana is actually an interesting topic. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Because the way she's treated on the island, in terms of we're doing this to protect you, it's sort of, in an interesting way, parallel when she gets to England and she's treated in a certain way by men. Look, I love Captain America the First Avenger, but that motley crew that he kind of assembles, they're not really...
We don't get to know them that well.
It's the mustache one, the British one, the black one, this one. Here, they meet three people who...
You got
the sharpshooter, the smooth talker, and, the chief.
Yeah.
And they're all so different, and they all have such an interesting perspective on war, which is what this movie is about.
It was war,
yeah.
And how everyone handled it.
Everyone has their own battles to fight, and it's not so black and white like Diana thinks it is. And I feel like people understand that it's not so black and white. The emotions that these characters give off, you could argue some of it may be a little cheesy, but Patty Jenkins said in an interview that she's not going to shy away from the cheese because, for the sake of...
It had its cheese, and not really, but it had its kind of goofy moments with the draft montage, but it still felt realistic. And
and it still felt good to the characters, and it progressed the story.
I do think this is better than the first Avenger, in my opinion. And Thor.
DC tries so much to create these parallels to Marvel.
They can blend them perfectly.
By unintentionally doing that, by actually focusing on their own film, they actually, in effect, wind up creating a story that is kind of an interesting blend of those films, but they're not those films. They are their own story. The villains are so sadistic and so evil, but like the other characters, they care so much about each other.
Yeah.
A partnership, and it's something that it's not that you don't see that in many movies, but
Exactly.
even comparing it to Marvel movies, think about Red Skull.
Dr. Poison, again, could have been that with her talking like this, you know, and it had that like thing on her mouth. It still felt realistic in a comic book movie, even though she could have been really goofy. It still felt natural in this film.
Similar but different goals. They worked in complete conflict with each other, and it led to what was really the core of the thing, a good story. Alright, fair warning with this next bit. Probably about halfway through this segment is going to be when you're not going to want to know what our opinions are, because there's going to be a lot of...
A timeline will be added in the description below.
We just want to talk about, just piece by piece, what we thought of the film.
The whole film, yeah.
The first big chunk, honestly, Themyscira, setting it in this beautiful location. I'm pretty sure they shot it in
colors
Greece.
were so
The
natural.
colors!
The colors!
For once, DC actually gave us color.
And what better way to
because
put it in
it's-
Themyscira?
It's this pure world where everybody is just perfect, or at least, I mean, to the average human being, they're perfect. Lore of the Greek gods and the legend of Ares, the god of war, and how, you know, Zeus made man his creation. Ares was jealous, tried to corrupt men. The
Absolutely.
Amazons were
the
used
animation
for
that scene was incredible
Yes,
when she
that
was telling her the
amazing
bedtime
too.
story.
The thing is, they stay on Themyscira for so long.
That's the first act of the
develop,
film.
To develop her character, to develop
Definitely.
her wants and needs and her desires. And on top of that, even when Chris Pine gets there, it's determining what they should do in
It's
regards to
challenging for her
war.
character,
It challenges her perception of what war is, who the Amazons are, and who the human beings are. The movie has a lot of atmosphere, and not just with the characters in the story, but with the action as well.
You know what I noticed is that
You know?
Zack Snyder loves to use slow motion, but not effectively. Here, every slow motion piece was effective.
Every bit
the first
is
time
used perfectly.
when that bullet went, when the bullet was shot and it killed one of her fellow colleagues,
Yeah.
and like she felt that and she fell. We fell with her.
And then we have another very large set piece of her just learning about what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Learning that Chris Pine
first
has
half-
stolen things.
I would say the first half of the second act is just her in London.
Every
Yeah.
single scene is for her to learn something. Everything is done so that she learns more about every single person, about their points of view, and about how everyone, including this character who David Thewlis plays, Sir Patrick, thinks of the war.
I saw this at a press screening, and there are 3 times where people just stood up and cheered, myself included. One of the times is that when she questioned the general and been like, "Who are you? You're a coward.
Who are you to say
Who are you
can
to
die
say?" Yeah.
and who live? I think the concept of learning.
Oh,
not
definitely.
that every film is about learning, but you have to know that your audience is always learning, even if your
Yeah,
characters
it's
are
a
aware
different
of what's
learning than
going
something
on.
like the Little Mermaid, you know, where
Exactly,
it felt
yeah.
like that, but a different structure. Her learning experience, like the stuff with the baby, when she's so happy about meeting that, and the stuff with the ice cream. I love little moments like
Yes,
that.
there's
that
little
impact her
moments.
character, yeah.
And on top of that, then it gets to the dark and grim
dark
that
side.
when DC
Yeah.
says they want to be dark and grim, this is what they're talking about, but sometimes
This
don't
is the
know how
moment
to
I
execute.
started to love the movie with that second half of the second act when they were walking towards the war and you saw the soldiers like being decapitated and like
Yes.
her reaction like we need to help
And
everyone.
every single one of her
Yeah.
friends, her allies,
Yeah, yeah.
The 4 guys, they all chime in their separate things because what can we do? The next big
next set
was
piece,
where
yeah.
I think wins everybody over.
It's in my top 15 superhero movies, I would say.
Yeah, and you've seen a lot. It's about what you believe, not what people deserve, about what they believe, who they are, what they've experienced, and why that shapes them. It's a very interesting...
She's a better Superman than Superman himself.
Yeah, it's an interesting character study about being, like, about humanity. We could talk about a huge chunk. It's going to be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, fast forward
Yeah.
to maybe the very end.
Yeah.
The concept of Ares, that Ares is the one causing this, the second that Ares will be stopped, that there's one bad guy to blame, then the war will be over. And turns out, Sir Patrick, the one who's been helping them along the whole time, is actually Ares. He wants Diana to see
That was surprising to
man's
me. What about
evil
you?
creation. That was a surprise to me
Yeah.
too. And it's not because you might not have been able to predict it, but it's because they make you forget about that because you're so invested in what's going on. Chris Pine wishes that there could be one bad guy to blame, and then there turns out to be one bad guy to blame, but at the same time, it's not. They use a perfect blend of having the big final boss battle at the end.
My favorite setup was young Diana saying the God Killer, the weapon to kill all gods, and then the payoff, she is the God Killer.
Exactly, the sword that she has, that strength that she's been carrying,
and when
she has to find that in herself.
Yeah. Love. With Chris Pine eventually sacrificing himself, being another Steve. Yeah. You know, kind of.
Another Chris playing a guy named Steve who blows up. As much as anybody who wants to nitpick the movie could argue, it's very much, you know, still a punching, kicking kind of Batman v Superman kind of climax. There are layers to this climax that justify a bunch of punching and kicking, and also
she killed Ares with love.
I sacrificed myself, and then you are Wonder Woman. If you sacrifice yourself, I'm just Steve, who can only live for so long, and can only, you know, protect and defend the world for so long, and that's what she's all about, and that's why this movie's so good.
The closing image with her looking out into Paris, and life is finally good. Her slowly looking at the camera, and boom, Wonder Woman. Directed by Patty Jenkins.
Because that's what it was all about.
And credit scene, which I loved too.
That's really all I gotta say about it. I mean, I could talk for more, but I don't want to prolong.
We could talk about every scene, but I think these are the highlights of what we want to discuss.
And I think next is what we're gonna bring up is, what does this mean for the DCEU in our opinion?
Are you still looking forward to Justice League?
No.
The best parts of themselves.
Neither am I,
because
I'm looking at Diana
the trailer. I'm
looking at Wonder Woman differently,
And that's the thing. I think one thing that's going to be important for anybody who's going to go in watching Justice League, who might not be a DC fan or is judging the movies as films themselves. I think the shame is that they're doing movies in the wrong order. If you had done a solo movie of every hero that's in this, even if Justice League was bad, you would have gotten some sort of depth, even if it was from previous movies, which is what they're trying to do with an expanded universe. So I don't necessarily have hope for it.
No.
I think that this was
saying
a
don't
good
copy
movie.
Marvel, you know, the Marvel tradition and like the Marvel classic, but you could have had a good Superman movie, a good Batman movie, a good Wonder Woman movie.
Then do Batman v Superman.
And then do Batman v Superman, and then do Justice League. I feel like,
but with warranted stakes. And I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that Wonder Woman is a one-hit wonder. The problem is the fact that they are now doing Justice League is that we are now going to have to wait for another good DC movie for, you know, for a while, and that's really what I kind of have to say.
Before Wonder Woman,
that.
We had no hope, and how is it that this movie, that a Lego Batman movie, could be the best DC movie we had in a while, you know? But how it came to me was like Man of Steel was kind of like, I would say, Iron Man, and then they went to Batman v Superman, what I would say is like Civil War. And this is a weird order, and then they went to Wonder Woman, which is like Captain America: First Avenger, and then you put out Justice League, which is like Avengers. So it's like all these like conflicting tones, and now they're doing solo movies with the Justice League, like Flash and Aquaman, which is like we don't even know about them in this universe.
It's all over the place. So best wishes to DC. We hope they do better. This movie was amazing, and
definitely.
And if our review didn't speak for itself, I think it's sufficient that we would say go see it in the theaters, maybe multiple times.
IMAX 3D.
Still wait in line to buy it full price on Blu-ray, digital.
Yeah, and even for those of you who are going to see this movie when it comes out on Blu-ray, again, buy it opening day.
Hopefully you have a large TV and a big sound system, because that's where it's best watched.
I wouldn't say it's better than like a lot of superhero movies like The Dark Knight or Logan, but it's different. It's a different
it's very
movie.
different, and
even though we're praising this, there are it's not an A+ movie. It's not, but the negatives are outweighed by the positive.
Far outweighed. So definitely, if you couldn't tell by this whole review, go see it. As usual, before you see a movie, check in with us. Thanks for watching.